This is an iconic cover. But before you read this, you gotta read this. So what is this? This is Marvel Comics Presents 1 through 10, just the Wolverine stories collected into a single, like almost triple-sized issue here. The pre-trade paperback collection of a storyline. These stories came out a few months before the iconic Wolverine ongoing series. This book holds so much nostalgia to me because it came out around the time I was just getting into being a monthly collector and found a comic shop for the first time. I've been reading the Hulks, as many of you know, and I was interested in the Wolverine character, although I wasn't really reading X-Men that much at the time. And I went to a comic shop and Wolverine #1 was coming out like right about that time. So this series in particular holds a lot of nostalgia to me. I did not really pick up the Marvel Comics Presents though at the time. I would pick them up here and there, but I think it was the fact that each issue just had a few pages of a character I really wanted to read about in it, that it was eating into that kid comic book budget. So it was really sporadic when I would pick those up. So I missed out on these first 10 issues and really just picked this up a couple of years ago, saw the Sam Keith cover and grabbed it without even realizing exactly what it was. And it is those early issues that set the stage for the ongoing. This is where Wolverine comes to Madripoor, kind of cements himself in that world, which carries on into that ongoing series. The first few issues came out 2 to 3 months, I think, before the ongoing came out, as best I can tell by the publication dates. But it's basically that same creative team. You got Chris Claremont writing it, John Buscema doing the art, but Klaus Janson is the inker on this, whereas on the Wolverine series, I think it's Al Williamson is the inker on that. But Klaus is going to step in on this one. What an opening page here. Now, the original cover to #1 had a Walt Simonson cover. And as a kid, I didn't really love it. I think I had to grow to appreciate Walt Simonson, but there was something about that cover that didn't attract me in the same way. I think it's the way he's holding his hands up, making like a T, and that circle shimmer that Simonson would do. It's something that I had to kind of grow to appreciate. Now I love Walt Simonson. I'm a huge Walt Simonson fan, but as a kid, that cover didn't jump out to me. But this interior page, this would have grabbed me. You've got Wolverine in the brown costume. Coloring's a little wonky on it, I guess, particularly in his legs here. Really, I think it's just where his chest is kind of meeting up with his legs right here. And you can't really see the colored trunks that he wears. It's just kind of odd. But John Buscema laying this out, feeling very Byrne-like. And here we get a nice look of Madripoor. Now, I thought Madripoor kind of appeared in the Wolverine book, but when I looked it up just to be sure, I guess they did a... I guess Chris Claremont did a Madripoor story in New Mutants before putting Wolverine in this world. And, you know, Madripoor is kind of like a proxy Singapore. Why they didn't just use Singapore, I don't know. It's one of the few fictional cities in Marvel. Everything else is real. You know, New York being the central point of most of the Marvel universe. But for some reason, they went with a fictional city here. But you get a good layout of what this city is like with these skyscrapers over here and then just some sprawling housing across the coast. 3 letterers worked on this. That's kind of unusual. Most of this narration is setting the stage of what Madripoor is, the high town, low town aspects of it, the general criminality of things. It doesn't really get too deep into why Wolverine is even here. And I didn't pull out the X-Men issues to see if it explained why he left the team to go to Madripoor for any specific reason. We're just kind of throwing Wolverine into the action in this Southwest Asian port town that has a really seedy side to it, as well as a very well-to-do upper class side to it as well. And immediately, Wolverine's going to go into the Princess Bar, which is going to be a regular set piece throughout his time in Madripoor, and get into a fight right off the bat. These guys are accosting somebody in here who has kind of reddish hair here. We're gonna see some inconsistent coloring through this. and he's going to step in. Notice he doesn't have the eye patch there. He's not going straight up by the patch identity here, but he dispatches these people pretty quick, runs them off, kind of, mocks them a little bit. And you get a little Charles Bronson vibe here. Dirty, or Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry. Guy's got a girl hostage and says, go ahead and pull the trigger. But after you do, bub, then you're mine. And of course, he just chickens out, runs off. So now the guy has blonde hair. This is the guy that was getting beat up on a second ago. And there's some interesting narration and dialogue here where the girl says she gives her name, and he's like, she's fishing for a name. I don't give her one. But then when he says, what are you doing here? And he says he's sent by a guy named Dave Chappell. That's interesting considering Dave Chappell is dead. And but they all pull guns. Even the woman pulls the gun on him. And that was the end of issue 1 of Marvel Comics Presents. It was just setting the stage and jump out. These stories are very much written almost like a Sunday strip. You're going to get a lot of repetition because on the next chapter, it's like it spends a page catching you up on the previous installment. And in like any of these Marvel comics from this era, we're going to constantly be told, I'm Wolverine, I'm a mutant, I have adamantium bones, and blah, 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 blah. So, in that sense, it's going to make reading something like this a little tedious, but there's a solid story that, like, you just got to kind of learn to skip over some of that. So each page would start with a splash page, and that was pretty much the only splash page you would get for that chapter because they only had 8-ish pages to tell a chapter. They didn't want to waste it on a splash page. The first issue bending that rule slightly only because it had the double page splash of Madripoor. So now we're going to meet Roche, and he is kind of like the crime lord of Madripoor, like the top dog in that regard. He's the kingpin of Madripoor, let's put it that way. And he's the one that sent these thugs to go beat up on the guy at the Princess Bar, and he's kind of giving them a hard time because they failed. But he's going to give them another shot if they can take out this enforcer named Razor Fist. Razor Fist is very goofy looking and cliche. He's had his hands surgically removed in favor of putting blades on his hands. He's wearing some kind of weird like wrestling onesie. I'm kind of glad this character did not stick around because yes, he's got swords and he's slashing people, but overall, he's kind of goofy looking. So he dispatches all those guys pretty easily. I think one maybe chickens out and was going to run off, but Roche grabs him and throws him in the water where I guess there's piranha. One thing about John Buscema on this Wolverine series in general, he it's some of his loosest work. When you look at like his stuff from the late 60s and 70s, it's very tight, very clean lines, and a lot of that has to do with the inking. I think in Conan he liked to be a little looser, a little bit more gestural in his drawing, and he brings that more to this Wolverine series, and it works for the type of story that Claremont decides to tell. He doesn't do straight up X-Men style plots and stuff in this that are bombastic superhero stuff. It's very gritty, it's crime, it's jungle action, things of that nature. And Buscema is definitely bringing very loose strokes and stuff. Klaus being a pretty good inker for that type of drawing in these first few issues. And of course, in the main Wolverine series, we even get like Bill Sienkiewicz doing some inking on John Buscema. I think John Byrne inks a few before he actually starts drawing too, but it's just more raw and kinetic and than a lot of the John Buscema stuff that he's probably most known for. So we get back to Wolverine, who again is explaining what he's doing in Madripoor. He's able to convince them how he found Dave Chappell, who was dying in the process, tortured by an expert. He says, "You see her try to get his name again. I'm Sapphire." Oldest offer in the book from the kind of woman who makes it almost irresistibly tempting. He's got a soft spot for redheads, right? Spots somebody looking at him and says something awfully familiar. Starts to move towards him as they head outside, and he gives chase. Some great panels here of him like scaling the walls, jumping down. I mean, when Buscema wants Wolverine to look very feral, he does a great job of it. And the cliffhanger of issue number 2, it's Jason Hone, who will, if you don't know who that is, it explains it all in the next few pages. So here's our opening splash of issue number 3. And here's your recap of her story altogether. She was a banker that was captured by the Reavers. The X-Men busted them up and saved her. They sent the Reavers through the Siege Perilous. Instead of sending her through the Siege Perilous, Roma sent her back to the time and place she was captured. And she says she may not thank her for it, that she may regret her decision to not go through the Siege Perilous. And that's kind of, they hadn't really seen her. The X-Men hadn't seen her up to this point. And she acts like she doesn't know who he is, so she may have actually never seen him without his mask on. So she's able to kind of make her escape from him as well and pushes him out in front of this truck, which smashes him. That's a good excuse for him to once again explain who he is, what his powers are, his adamantium bones, yada, yada, yada. He's the best he is at what he does. Once again, she takes off. And at this point, once again, she takes off, but she doesn't just straight up runs away. She comes back and kicks him again to get away. I guess just to ensure that she's got enough of a head start. Great facial expression here on this panel. The coloring of his mouth needs to be changed, though. He should have had a little white for his teeth or something there. Then you see this Sapphire finds him out in the alleyway. Of course, this isn't far from the Princess Bar. He just chased Jason out down a few alleyways. So she grabs him, and then you definitely get a sinister look on her face right here, where she says her name is actually Sapphire Styx. And she goes to kiss him, and it makes his world like spin around. Makes him feel pathetically weak. Coloring doing a lot of the work on this one as well, with her red, sinister glow here, and then this magenta to insinuate that it's doing something to Wolverine he's unprepared for. Razor Fist steps out of the shadows and gives him a good thwack as we fade out in our cliffhanger to the next chapter, opening up with him in a torture chamber chained up with a basket of hot pokers ready to go. Now, bear in mind, nobody knows who he is, and the X-Men are actually believed to be dead at this point. That's kind of a running theme throughout this and the Wolverine ongoing for a while, is that everybody thinks the X-Men are dead, and they had a power for a little while where cameras and stuff couldn't even detect them or pick them up, and that just kind of goes away over some time. So Sapphire Styx here kind of reveals herself. She's actually working with Roche, even though she was in that Princess Bar. Seemed like she was friendly with O'Donnell. She was kind of in there, I think, as a mole in his organization. She's got the Madeline Pryor white outfit on here. And whatever her power is exactly, that they kind of refer to her like a vampire, that it's definitely sapping his strength and his energy. I mean, look at his face right there. And Roche explains now that, he's the kingpin of this town, but lately he's had a challenger that goes by the name of Tiger, and they're trying to find this Tiger. And that the last guy, which was the Dave Chappell, I believe, said that he did not give any information, which was most unfortunate for him, and that they think Wolverine here has the information and they're going to torture him. So we got a guy named the Inquisitor who's apparently a torture expert, and he is going to torture Wolverine. Back at the Princess Bar, we find out that Jason and O'Donnell are in it together, and they make a point to add more characterization that this character is much different than when we saw her in X-Men, where she was an innocent banker just kind of being used by the Reavers, and now she is much more cold and calculated, and she's like, I don't even miss the person who I was. Notice the look of her here compared to the way Sam Keith likes to draw her later on. Sam Keith would draw this character in his little Marvel Comics Presents Blood Hungry, I believe it's called. with Peter David. Many issues after this, but it's just kind of interesting how she looks here versus the way he likes to draw her. Buscema definitely drawing her as a much more typical Asian body type, very thin, kind of lanky, whereas Sam Keith, a lot more vivacious, a lot more curves. We get back to Wolverine being tortured in here. He's being subdued, mostly from the power of this Sapphire Styx here. Now, a pet peeve I've had about more modern versions of Wolverine over the last really closer to 20 years now is how invincible he is. I mean, he's just like an unstoppable tank. He gets, shot in the face where like all the skin is peeled from his face and it's just a adamantium skeleton like the Terminator, but he just keeps on going. But back in these days, he could be subdued even though he had the unbreakable bones, even though he had the healing factor. Claremont was good about finding ways to make Wolverine still be vulnerable. And that made him a much more interesting character. He was fearless in that he knew that whatever damage he took, he could recover from, but also he wasn't just like unstoppable. This kind of reminiscent of that Silvestri cover right there. I mean, look at him here. His healing factor's not even working quite as well as you would think. I mean, nowadays he gets a little scuff and it's just like heals instantly. Like, it might bleed for half a second and then it automatically heals. But here, he's got to fight through this. So they've left him alone for a minute and he decides to pop his claws, which is the first time we've seen him do it in the series so far. Cuts himself free and makes his way outside where he's once again encounters Razor Fist, but he's weak. He's weakened. He's vulnerable, as I was saying. And the narration actually states the obvious here about his hands being surgically replaced with super keen swords. Always wondered how he eats or gets dressed. So even Claremont was like, I need to address that. And Wolverine basically just gets it handed to him again, but he falls into this water and goes down off the side in a waterfall. And you get him being like an honorable warrior. He's like, farewell, I salute you. You would have been a much more worthy opponent if you were at your full capacity, but we'll never know. So, they try to build up Razor Fist here as being somewhat honorable, I guess, but I can't get past his look. I can't get past the hands. This is a great opening splash. And the cover to this issue was pretty similar to this, with him with this, what is that? Like a thing they hook horses up to? Look at the line work and the sun beating down on him. Now, this is a weird transition if you're just reading straight through here, because all of a sudden he's in his costume. Last we saw him, he fell off of the waterfall, and he hasn't been in costume so far. But here he is. It's almost like the editors at this point, this is like the 4th or 5th issue now. The editors are like, hey, we need him to be in his costume at least once here, like put him in there for a minute. But it's not the story that Claremont is wanting to tell. So this is a hallucination. All of this is a hallucination while also recapping where he is in the storyline so far. These are the facial expressions that Buscema is really knocking out of the park. His brother Sal's great about facial expressions too. And all of this hallucination essentially just leads us right back to him being in the water, which is where we just left him off. Where Jason Hone is going to rescue him and pull him up from the water onto a boat. And it's right here where he wakes up and pops his claws that she sees. Those blades are sticking out of his hands. And she knows exactly who he is at that point, but he passes out because, again, he's weak, he's vulnerable in this story. He's been beaten up, and it's taking him a while to recover. That's the way his healing factor used to be. It wasn't an instantaneous thing where he would just take a little bit of damage and 2 seconds later pop back up. He could get beat up and be taken out of commission for multiple issues at a time. I mean, even when he gets his adamantium ripped out of him, they don't really say how much time passes when that happens, but he has it happen in one issue, and then in the next issue of Wolverine, which, as far as you can tell, is picking up right where it left off, he's back on his feet, and it's just Claremont never wrote him like that. So she nurses him back pretty much to health. And as he's up and feeling better, all of a sudden, she, says, "I know who you are, Wolverine," and gives him a hug. Now, at this point, I think the Wolverine regular series had debuted. At that point, where we know we're calling him Patch, he has the eye patch on. I don't know if this issue came out with this kind of first appearance of Patch first or not. I think it probably came out maybe even the same month. But you get this where maybe he's not wearing that as a disguise like you seem to think in the regular ongoing series, that something happened to his eye here that it was still taking a while to heal up. And I'd like to know, I guess it's too late to ask Buscema. You could ask Byrne, I guess, could be asked. Whose idea was it to put an eye patch on him? Was it Buscema, like, I'm just going to draw an eye patch on him and see what it looks like, and they just rolled with it? Or what? So at this point, she's going to recap again what happened to her. And she's going to add, though, that they were actually trying to turn her into a Reaver in the process. This character, Pretty Boy, was trying to corrupt her so that she would, be more willing or up for the things that they wanted to do with the Reavers. For the time being, she appeals to his honor, though, that she saved his life and she wants his help. And he's like, his own honor as like a samurai Ronin himself, he's going to go ahead and help her. This other boat pulls up and everybody's been stabbed by Razor Fist. Pretty brutal. She goes down to check on somebody that she knows in the boat, and there was a bomb in it. And that was your cliffhanger there. Next issue, we get him saving her from the water. And now his debt to her has been paid. You get the whole thing of, he grabs her at the last minute and is able to pull her up, and they're able to escape. Meanwhile, now Roche is thinking he's won, and he's going to start asserting his dominance back over Lowtown. It looks like we've got like a brothel here being taken back over and stuff. None of this is good. And the one woman runs off trying to get to the police, who are, they're counting their money. They're on the take as well. The one thug follows her into the alleyway, and you just hear snicked, and it Wolverine killing in this issue. She's killing too. Look, she grabs an Uzi, takes out a bunch of them. Look at her there, squatting down, just firing away. In here, they also start calling him Patch, but he doesn't say like I'm Patch. They just start saying Mr. Patch, and they call him Pat like it's like a known thing that that's what he's called. And he barely uses his claws. Meanwhile, they think O'Donnell, the guy from the Princess Bar at the beginning of the story, Roche thinks he is Tiger. And so he's decided to come, take it out. He's like, I'm going to do you slow so everyone hears you scream and make an example out of you, yada, yada. He's got his torturer, his inquisitor there to do it. Meanwhile, Wolverine and Tiger, now we're just going to call her Tiger, Tiger Tiger, is going to break into Roche's place to end this whole thing, Roche's estate. This may have been the end of the chapter, and this started the chapter, and because then we get the full page spread on the next one. This is a great moment though, where they send the grunt down to unclog a drain over here, and Wolverine comes up through the water and takes him out, and he's wearing his black kind of ninja outfit with the shaded over face. Like, I've never quite understood if that was just like blackout makeup that he put on or something. I liked it. I always thought it looked cool, but I've never quite understood what it is. Like, even on the cover, Wolverine #1, because it's like crosshatched. Anyway, I like this look for Wolverine though. I mean, I much prefer him in like his traditional X-Men costume, but I do like this look. I've always liked it. I like how it's just using one claw out too. And this really reminds me of when him and Nightcrawler were in the sewers to take on the Hellfire Club, and he creates a blackout or slashes out their electrical box here to create the blackout, and then he's just going to start taking people out. Meanwhile, Tiger Tyger is going to do the same thing. She's going to sneak in the other entrance because he's created the distraction for her. She's even got her tiger stripes on her face. Cool moment with the dogs. These dogs have had their larynxes removed so they don't make any noise when they sneak up on their prey, but he just lets out a growl and scares them off. But that creates attention to him, and he starts getting shot at. And I couldn't really quite tell, is he getting hit right there by the bullet? Like right there, it looks like maybe it's hitting the ground just that close to him. Because nowhere in the narration does it say that he took any of the bullets. So these guys are like stormtroopers. They just terrible shots. I mean, all of this is so like just loose figure work. Some stuff gets lost in the coloring, like definitely between Wolverine's black costume and the black hair of this character, that kind of gets a little lost. Sapphire Styx is down here draining O'Donnell. Tiger Tyger comes in, takes her out, or appears to anyway, shoots her in the back. The Inquisitor is there to kind of put up a fight. Meanwhile, Wolverine gets to take on Razor Fist in the battle we knew had to come with these guys. I mean, he's just so corny looking. Great action pose here. This is typical Buscema. Two twisting figures, just a lot of power in that hit to the ribs right there. This is just our climax, really. I mean, a lot of narration, a lot of Claremont narration right here, but ultimately just a fight. Good Wolverine characterization in the narration, but not really pushing the story forward, I would say. The print gets a little lost right there. She's just smacking his head into the into the floor, into the stone floor. Here, she looks like she got shot in the back a second ago, but now she's back up, putting up a fight herself. Wolverine assumes that this Sapphire is a mutant like herself. They never straight up say that, though. Tiger's gonna bite her neck. She's like a vampire, but she bites her in the neck instead. Ah, you bit me. You're a mad woman. And then burns her with the hot poker that the Inquisitor had out. And then they just decide to take their leave. Meanwhile, you have Wolverine and the Razor Fist here finishing their battle as well. Great panel there of his fist in the foreground, finally popping his claws. He just doesn't use his claws very much during these Madripoor days. And he ends Razor Fist pretty easily at this point. Stabs him in the in the groin. Where are his arms going right there? Is it in the stomach? Is he slashing up like this? Or is he slashing down like that? Kind of hard to tell. This is a great splash page, though. That is a Wolverine that has been through some things. Wrap up our story here. He goes and rescues O'Donnell and carries him out. Roche comes out and blasts Wolverine. Looks like his head came off almost. Tiger comes out and takes him out, and it seems like he's dead. Look, Wolverine, she thinks he's dead. They walk off thinking he's dead. And then at first he's kind of like, you know what? It's better that she thinks I'm dead. The rest of the world thinks the X-Men are dead. This kind of maintains my story. But the thing is, I like it here. And so that's setting up the whole staying in Madripoor thing. Now, like I said, the ongoing series was already coming out at this point. By the time this chapter came out, it was probably on the second or even third issue. This took about 5 months to tell, 10 parts, or it was a bi weekly series. So, 5 months. This came out, I probably around the third month, I think, is when Wolverine #1 hit. So he's going to return to the Princess Bar. You see her, you know, all dressed up now. She's not just wearing like peasant clothes as she was earlier. She's definitely wearing the robes of the new kingpin of the island. And then they make a pact together here where she slashes his wrist and she cuts hers, and they make like a blood pact together, and then they smooch, and they're in a relationship, I guess. And that's the end of this storyline from Marvel Comics Presents 1 through 10. This is a good way to grab it. It's got a cool Sam Keith cover. You got the whole Wolverine story. Now you're going to miss out on a lot of other stuff that was in those Marvel Comics Presents, but still a nice little package. And just think, this was only a $3 collection when it came out back in 1992. That's all I got for this one. Until next time.
Read your comics.